Hello, this is Emma Leavesley for the University of ADHD podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about the diagnostic criteria for ADHD and how it differs from actually living with ADHD. So in order to get a diagnosis of ADHD, we look at diagnostic criteria. So I'm going to use the DSM5 criteria and I'm going to go through them first of all, and then we're going to look at what's not included. First of all, we're going to look at the inattentive symptoms of ADHD. Fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes. Yep, that's fair enough. Has difficulty sustaining attention. Now, this is a bit of a strange one because people with ADHD can pay attention, so long as it's something that they're interested in. People with ADHD have got great attention. They can hyperfocus, and if something interests them, then they can work on that for hours on end. However, if something doesn't interest them, then it's not a case of won't, it's a case of can't. If it's something that doesn't grab their attention, they can't pay attention to that thing. It's not a case of them just being willful or being rude or anything like that. It's a case of they can't pay attention to it. Does not appear to listen. Struggles to follow with instructions. Has difficulty with organisations. Avoiding or disliking tasks requiring sustained mental effort. So anything that takes concentration for a very long period of time, then there's the chance of procrastination or avoiding it altogether. So it's that overwhelm that they get that they just can't initiate that task. There's losing things, being easily distracted, and being forgetful in day-to-day activities. Looking at the hyperactive and impulsive symptoms then, they're grouped together. Fidgeting with hands or feet or squirming in the chair. Difficulty remaining seated when they're supposed to be sat down. Running about or climbing excessively in children, but that turns to extreme restlessness in adulthood. What I will say about hyperactivity in adulthood is that it can be internalised. I mean, it is with kids as well, but the diagnostic criteria don't really mention the internal hyperactivity. So that's thoughts going at 100 miles an hour, things just popping into your head, and everything just getting very noisy in your head. Difficulty engaging in activities quietly. Act as if driven by a motor. So adults will often feel like they're inside driven by a motor. Talking excessively. Blurting out answers before questions have been completed. Difficulty waiting or taking turns. And interrupting or intruding upon others. Now, there's this idea, which is becoming a thing of the past, really, that there's these three types of ADHD. There's predominantly inattentive, where you've got the inattentive symptoms, predominantly hyperactive and impulsive, where you've got those symptoms, and the combined presentation, which is where you've got a combination of the two. The predominantly hyperactive, impulsive presentation, that's very rare that somebody just has those symptoms. What the thought is now is that when you're a child, you're more hyperactive, and that hyperactivity reduces as you get to adulthood, and it becomes more of the internal hyperactivity. You still get some degree of impulsivity, but it's less than when you're a child. Whereas the inattention stays the same, might sort of disappear towards adulthood, but it's relatively stable. So people with ADHD in adulthood tend to be either predominantly inattentive or they have the combined presentation. What's going on then beyond the diagnostic criteria? That's a very simplified way of looking at ADHD, but that's how it's diagnosed. And these symptoms have to have been present before the age of 12. That's why when somebody goes for a diagnosis or an assessment of ADHD, they like to ask parents to get a bigger picture of what was going on before they were 12, because often people with ADHD don't remember. They may do, but generally they don't remember from that age. There are other things on top of that that are very common in ADHD, and to the point where I'd say pretty much everybody with ADHD has these problems. So I'm just going to talk to you about those now. I'm going to talk about how ADHD develops across the lifespan. What you might notice in preschool, I know with my son I definitely noticed that when he was a toddler he was likely to have ADHD. That could be hyperactivity and not paying attention. However, all toddlers are to some degree hyperactive and don't pay attention. Getting to primary school age, then you may notice that they might be a little bit behind behavioural wise compared to other children their own age. But also at that age, you're put in a classroom, you're supposed to be sat down all the time. So it can be really difficult for children with ADHD to be able to do that, to be able to sit still and listen. They've got to learn to read and write and everything else, and they may struggle with that. Also, at primary school age, they have difficulty in social interaction, but at that age, it's tolerated by their peers. The other kids will play with them. Get into high school, and that tolerance from their peers starts to disappear. And it's through adolescence that people with ADHD really start to notice that they're different. And this can lead to feelings of rejection, low self-esteem, and also people-pleasing as well. Because they want to fit in and they've got that low self-esteem, they will go out of the way to please other people. And this could be through peer pressure, taking drugs, using alcohol, antisocial behaviour, or it could just be bending over backwards to help people out. I know with my son, he will try to hang around with a group of kids and they will get him to do the thing that they're not brave enough to do, but he will do because he wants to please them, and he's the one that gets in trouble for it. And that's a very common thing with ADHD, especially with boys. And this is where rejection sensitivity dysphoria starts to come about. So across school life, really, because kids with ADHD struggle to be like the other children, and education is very much geared up for neurotypical children. They're often criticised quite a lot, made to not feel so great because they've got what's called bad behaviour. It's not their fault. They might feel that they're behind the rest of the class, they're not as intelligent. And these comments that are made by parents and teachers at this age, it's really important that people get this right. Because if you're criticised constantly at that age, it really does impact on your beliefs about yourself. And rejection sensitivity dysphoria doesn't just stop at childhood and adolescence, it goes through people's lives and it can ruin people's lives. So that is where you've got an intense sensitivity to real or perceived rejection. So this could be sensitivity to criticism, or somebody could make a comment that's not necessarily aimed at you, but you really take that on board as something personal to you. Or it could be fear of being rejected by friends and family, and you can either push people away to avoid that rejection, or carry on with the people pleasing and do things to try and keep people in your life. Moving on to college age then, obviously there's the chance that you can leave college, drop out. In the UK, you're supposed to stay in education. It's a legal requirement that you stay in education till you're 18. Also, you might fail your courses. If you want to go to university, then this can cause problems because when you go to university, you're supposed to be a lot more independent. As well as that, at college age, if you've had an EHCP all the way through school, when you leave college, that EHCP doesn't exist to help you anymore. So when you go to university, there's the disability department that can help you. They can give you extra support in class. They can give you a mentor or a coach. Some universities do, some universities don't have that availability. Also, they can give you extra time to do assignments or extra time in exams like you'd get at school. But also at that age, when you get to the age of 18 and onwards till about the age of 25, you're supposed to be independent. If you've gone away to uni, you might be living on your own away from your parents for the first time. With ADHD, your executive functioning skills are around 3 years behind that of the neurotypical peers. When you go to uni at the age of 18, your planning and organisational skills are that of somebody who is 15. So you can really struggle with that. And young people at the age of 18 to 25 struggle anyway, but if you've got ADHD, it's extra hard. You've got to make your own doctor's appointments, you've got to pay bills, you've got to pay rent, mortgage, you've got to clean your own house, and all of this can really get on top of you and cause a lot of problems. It's important to note as well that people with ADHD are more likely to use alcohol and misuse substances. If you're treated, this goes away because the medication actually reduces the risk of this. But if you're not on medication, you'll try and self-medicate. And that can be through impulsive eating, gaming, gambling, alcohol, substance misuse. And so it's a really good idea to identify that you've got ADHD and get on the medication. The earlier the better. As an adult, you can have mood instability, problems at work, difficulty holding down a job, again, low self-esteem, having problems keeping relationships, difficulty with organising and planning and completing things. You're at more of risk of motor accidents. You are supposed to tell the DVLA if you've got ADHD. And also, if you've got children yourself, it's a highly heritable disorder, so it's likely that they will have it too. But also, it can affect your parenting style and cause you to be overwhelmed and not quite know how to deal with being a parent. So it's really important to get help as an adult with ADHD. So there's a number of emotional problems that people with ADHD struggle with that aren't in the diagnostic criteria. Things like emotional dysregulation, and this happens in childhood a lot as well. Some people might call it mood swings. It's often called a meltdown. So this could be frustration, anger, rage. It could be anxiety and fear. Just not being able to move or do anything, everything's too scary. It could be despair, hopelessness, and just not being able to function. Sometimes people with ADHD can have emotional blunting, so not able to express emotions. But people with ADHD are more likely to have anxiety and more likely to have depression than the general population. So this could be social anxiety, panic disorder, generalised anxiety, phobias, or OCD. People with ADHD are also more likely to have things like insomnia and sleep problems, sleep paralysis, and also more likely to smoke, more likely to overeat. And it really is important that ADHD is supported. So the social problems associated with ADHD, the big one is trying to function in a neurotypical world. That feeling of, why aren't I normal? Why do I struggle to be normal? That can be overwhelming. How come all these people know what to do and I don't? I feel on my own here. Also, I've mentioned the people pleasing, feeling different, like you don't fit in, problems with relationships, also problems running a home, just not being able to clean the house, not being able to remember to do things like brush your teeth, have a shower, wash your clothes, not being able to remember to pay bills, getting into debt, having difficulties with employment and also jumping from job to job, maybe not staying in a job very long, possibly getting sacked or leaving impulsively, and problems with responding to texts, emails and messages as well. So there's quite a lot of things that aren't in the diagnostic criteria that people with ADHD struggle with. And if this is something that you want help with, I don't just help with study skills and uni and college, I help with all this stuff too. If you go to my website, rethink-adhd.co.uk, get in touch there, you can book a free call with me and we can discuss how I can help you. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking about comedy and a sense of humour with ADHD. It can be used as a way to mask ADHD and mask emotional problems, but it can also be used as a coping strategy as well. So I'll see you then. Don't forget to go to my website to give any feedback, any comments, and also to sign up to my mailing list to get details on offers, freebies, and courses that are coming up in the new year. See you next time.